Recognize Hubler Chevrolet for an athletic donation. Unfortunately, they could not be here in attendance. So later tonight, we are accepting $250,000 donation from Hubler Chevrolet to the athletic department that will be dispersed over a 10-year period, but it's a nice gift to give back to the community. So we want to say thank you. So we'll be in the next board meeting when we actually get the chance to say thank you, but I did want to recognize them.
Yeah, very well.
That will conclude recognition.
All right. You guys would like to stick around, you're welcome to stick around. Or you could exit. I don't know that I needed to say that. So I'm a little offended, but that's okay. I will move on to next agenda, public comments. If there's any public comments, I ask you to come forward, speak your name, and keep your comments to 2 minutes. Seeing none, we will move on to board comments. Collective bargaining.
We are starting the work with the teachers union. We have our first meeting next week, so looking forward to that, and expect to have that wrapped up probably by the end of September.
Very good. Thank you. Communication committee.
We did meet. We discussed maybe the week after, or maybe this week, I guess. Maybe they're going to start a communications audit just to see kind of how we're doing, what we can do better. We discussed our thought exchange and how we're going to use that in the future. And then coming up later this year, we're going to use some free hours that we have from, I don't even know
CIESC.
Yes, but what is that?
It's our service center.
Okay, all right, to highlight the high school and do a promotional video. So, exciting stuff.
Thank you. Legislative council. We don't have a representative.
I have one comment on that. This past session, there was legislation passed to give school corporations relief from contributing to the teacher retirement fund in the form of 2% savings. For us, that equates to about $300,000, and we're happy to report that will 100% of that will go towards teacher raises over the next year.
Great news. Mental health.
We are excited tonight. We are going to announce the recommendation for the Director of Mental Health. She is with us today. She is a director right now. Executive Director of Kick It, No Place to Call Home, and our McGinney-Vento, but we're going to recommend that Kim Sperling become the first Director of Mental Health for our school district as she continues to move forward. So we'll learn more about her in a minute. And then Mr. Perley and myself will be doing a presentation on a few of the early steps coming up.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Excited to have you here. So, music council.
We met this evening. The highlights are that the musical this year is High School Musical. It will be October 24th through the 26th, and starting September 16th, tickets for all of the events in the pack through the end of the year will go on sale. So the Christmas performances and all that. So get your tickets early. And then another exciting thing from the choir, 21 kids made the All-State Honor Choir this year. That is the most from any school in the state's history. So
Wow.
That's kind of a big deal. Yeah. Exciting stuff.
Great news. Project.
Employer of choice, Ms. Gross is coming back in the next couple of months, but we do have upcoming strategic task force meeting on September 25th. We're meeting in the high school cafeteria, and this is the first meeting of the strategic planning process for us. So everyone's included. We do have teacher names as well as community leaders, but anyone's welcome to attend.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent, Strategic Task Force.
Same.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to consent agenda.
Move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Is there any comments or questions?
I do have one one highlight on the property and casualty insurance. There was an error discovered on our original proposal. So once that our total assets were overvalued, so our original premium will be decreased by about $9,000.
Great.
So the total increase went from 12% down to 8%.
That's good. Every bit helps.
Mr. Wertz, also on you, Teacher Appreciation Grant. By law, we are required each year to declare how we are going to receive those dollars. And remember, it's 25% difference between highly effective and effective as a stipend. And this is just the annual reminder of that.
And Mr. Wertz, also, we've attached the updated teacher evaluation plan. There are no substantive changes this year, just some wording and formatting changes.
Very well. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, you have now hired official member to a very, very important, very important role.
Thank you.
We'll move on to superintendent reports, 10X grants. Dr. Clendenning.
Thank you. Last year, this was the first time we were able to offer 10X grants in partnership with the Brannigan Foundation, Franklin Education Connection, and the high school. And tonight, we are here with their leader, Mrs. McCain, to highlight the different students, and they're going to share a little bit about their 10X project. So, Mrs. McCain.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Melissa McCain, and I am proud to bring with me the 4 of 5 recipients of the 2018 Student Innovation Project Grant, along with the committee who has watched these students work hard over the last year and be successful in our innovative ideas, which is really exciting. So we're excited for them to present that to you. I say 4 out of 5 because our first one that I'm going to show you is Nina Smith, and she is off to Ball State University right now, doing what this grant she hoped would help her do, which was become a student of the architecture program at Ball State. And so she feels like with this grant, it helped her get that in, and she was accepted directly into the program. So she's pretty excited about that. Her mentor through this program was Ronnie Oliver. So I'd like to recognize her before we get started. And then I'm going to do my darndest to represent Nina and her efforts the best I can. But Nina's project was based on architecture. She was interested in becoming an architect and also took note of when she was driving down Main Street in Franklin, or the different streets in Franklin, some of the beautiful housing that we have and then some that wasn't as pleasing visually. And so she felt a need to work towards doing something about that. And so her goal in working with Ronnie was to create a graphic 3D blueprint design for Mr. Hessman's construction class house project in downtown Franklin. And while she was doing that, she took an interest in preserving the historic architecture of the house. So she wanted to kind of keep that hometown Franklin feel to it. So she started her project by doing a house tour of the house. It had obviously been abandoned for quite a while. It was very dilapidated. We taped our, Ronnie is laughing with me because it was quite a sight, but we taped our pants closed so that they would crawl up there, and wore lots and lots of insect repellent. There was evidence of squatters in the house as we walked through it. Many things in need of much repair, along with there were kitchen and bathroom additions that probably weren't the safest additions to the house. And so it was great for Nina to go through this. And as she saw those things that were in dire need, she also, with her architect eye, found many things that she was excited and interested to work with. The transom over the windows, I had no idea what those were. And while we were in the house, she was telling me all about them and how great it was to see it. beautiful winding stair rails, and original shiplap on the siding of the house. So she was excited to get started. She met with local house historians and learned to use fire maps in her research, which she just contacted me last week, all excited because one of her first projects at Ball State was to use fire maps. And she has a project where she'll do the history of Franklin using the fire maps. And so she already had a much better grasp of what that meant and how those could help her in her first project. She met with local architects and even got to tour the home of an architect who had designed and built his own house. So she got to see what architects kind of think through and how they organize that kind of design, which she was pretty excited about. And then she purchased a SketchUp license, which is what architects use. The best thing I can liken it to is if you watch Chuck and Joanne and she sits them down at the table and shows them what the house is going to look like on the digital screen. Nina did that, and she was hoping to build the house from Franklin using the blueprints, but because of legalities, the blueprints weren't released in enough time for her to do her project, but she didn't let that stop her. She went and found blueprints for a different building and learned from scratch how to build this house. And it was kind of interesting to watch her in the process, because when I say from scratch, like if there was a shelf in the house, like inside and out, it wasn't just the outside. So if there was a shelf in the house, she didn't just build a shelf. She had to design the bolt holes for the shelf. Like it was extremely detailed. So she was very proud of herself through that process as she learned through SketchUp tutorials. She felt like being accepted directly into Ball State, into the College of Agriculture and Planning, was a big woohoo, and that this grant, when she was able to put that on her application, really boosted that possibility and opened up that opportunity for her. And then once again, that fire map project assignment, she was elated when she called me to let me know how those connected together. Learning points, as I said, she was unable to obtain the quiet title on the Franklin house within the project timeframe, but I was pretty proud of her for not letting that stop her. What she gained, she said she learned so much from the experience through the grant. It confirmed her choice to pursue an education at Ball State's College of Agriculture and Planning program. Career connections with the community. She made lots of connections with the local architects, with Ronnie and the Franklin development. And then she even has already been offered through the connections that she made in this grant, an internship for next summer in architecture. Giving back to the community, her thanks and appreciation for the opportunity, which allowed her to expand her love and knowledge of the architecture. She hopes to be able to, as she finishes her program, bring that love of architecture back to Franklin and do something about the housing that she saw while she was here that started the project. And then she wanted to give a big thanks to Ronnie for mentoring her during the project, and the Brannigan Foundation for the grant, and the FCS and the Student Innovation Projects Committee for providing the amazing opportunity. So on behalf of Nina, thank you. And then I'm gonna let Luke come on up and introduce himself to you. And then after that, we'll just go on with the rest of the kids, so.
Oh, thank you for having me here today. I decided to get a new title for my student innovation project. It's called These Fish Are Friends, Not Food. Here are some pictures of the fish that I got. The fish on the right are the dwarf gourami in the 37-gallon tank that we have. And on the right, we have some sunburst platies in our 10-gallon tank. I was not able to get pictures of our beta in the 5-gallon tank. He's just camera shy, don't worry. We've had many successes and failures. Some successes we've had is that it went very smoothly getting the fish and building the stands and getting everything where it is right now. Some failures that we've had is that we reached max budget really easily. As many people have said before me, Pets are expensive. This project has impacted me in a lot of ways. It gave me a better understanding of fish care, and it helped me get more involved with in-school activities. So what's next? I would like to get some aquarium club members, but everything else is planned out, and we're gonna get some big tanks and research grants along the way. I would like to give a special shout out to Ms. McCain for introducing me to the Student Innovation Project and giving me a spot to put up the tanks, Mr. Hessman for helping me build the tanks, and I'll admit that he did most of the hard work. And mostly I would like to thank Mr. Baker for helping me every step of the way as my student mentor. He helped me with everything from getting supplies to caring for the fish. Thank you.
Good job.
Next up, we have Kelby and Peyton.
Okay, so I'm Kelby,
I'm Peyton.
and as many of you know, our project was photojournalism, and here's what we did. Our final product came out as being yearbook pictures, which really helped with like soccer, baseball, football, and all the other sports that couldn't be covered in enough time to have pictures for the yearbook for enough variety. We made lots of connections and opportunities through this because when we went there, we met a lot of the parents who actually wanted pictures of just their kid, but we didn't have enough time to complete that. But we did meet some parents, and we were getting into connections to help them with those. The experience we got with this was the people skills. We met a lot of people, like I just mentioned, and planning and timing. Planning and timing became a very big thing throughout this whole process because as we figured out very quickly, we had to figure out when we could come and when the games were happening so we could get the best pictures along with the weather.
And another big part of our project is a lot of our equipment. Our bags, if we didn't have our bags, we wouldn't be organized, or if we didn't have the batteries like we had, so we can stay longer, because the batteries we had before were not good at all. And another thing, the lens filters, it made a lot of our pictures really well because the sun is really bad with the pictures and the lighting. That's it for the equipment. We had a lot of successful moments. One being getting accepted to this project and talking to one of another connections of Mr. DeRosa with the yearbook pictures. And we had one of the things called the Web Project. We went to Web and we took pictures of their dance for the awareness of Moira McCain. And that was another big success.
Impact, students actually really enjoyed seeing themselves in our pictures that we posted on Flickr. Students were actually like, can I get some more pictures? Like, how do I get some more of those? Can I get them printed out? Or like, sure, just, we'll print it out for you. We had a variety of yearbook pictures. From years before, the pictures were very limited to what Mr. DeRosa could get. So one of our big things was helping him out so that way parents, teachers could see their students or kids in the yearbook in a different light. That way, more awareness for them. It also brought awareness to photography. Photography is already a big thing in this world, but a lot of people are kind of scared to get into it and think it takes a lot of work, which it does. But to get into it, it's not that hard. What we learned and what's next. So timing and planning, like I said, is a very big thing throughout this, along with the commitment. The commitment is humongous because when you have to work a job and trying to figure out times, it takes a lot of planning. Appropriate clothing, that's actually a funny story. We, thanks to Ms. McCain, actually, we have these sick polos, but the reason we got them is because we were going to go to a golf tournament. Well, we got there, they weren't dressed for the occasion. So that kind of fell through. But like I said, organization and planning definitely comes in. You must be a people person too. Like when parents ask for their pictures, you gotta know how to talk to them. You gotta know how to communicate. Photography is definitely a very competitive career. There's many people out there doing it, and it's very hard to find gigs and photo shoots that you can do. For what's next, we enjoy photojournalism and photography in general. However, we think that we're just going to keep it as a hobby, because right now we figure that it's a lot of commitment, and we think that it would be best just to do it as a hobby. We also are working with this FCHS to work on their website and get some more pictures throughout the sports area. And last but not least, we actually have cards to hand out that my mother will be handing out, but they will take you right to our pages where you can see all of our pictures that we've taken for the yearbook and everything. That's also why there's kind of blank slides, but I think you guys will enjoy seeing the pictures and what we've created. I would like to give a big shout out to Miss McCain for helping us out with this project, along with Miss Van Aken, who helped get us started with the project. And of course, my mother and father, who are here. And also, I would like to thank the Brannigan Foundation for this, and FCHS for helping us out.
A big thanks to Miss McCain, and my parents couldn't make it today, but thanks to them, and thanks to the Brannigan Foundation for this opportunity.
Last but definitely not least, you're going to be very impressed with Abby Tatera.
Hello, thank you all for having me. First of all, I'll say that. Last time this presentation happened, there was a lot bigger of a crowd, so it's a little less nervous at this point. As you might have known from last time, or if you remember, my project is a book called Small Town Feel, Franklin Through the Decades. Oh, and also, there's a lot of pictures in this slideshow that will hopefully be incorporated into the book. They might be in black and white later. We'll just see. How do I slide down? There we go. Okay. Summary so far is that Small Town Feel, Franklin Through the Decades, will be a book commemorating the evolution of Franklin, Indiana, our beloved hometown, through its physical and community aspects. Community meaning the people that live here and love it. So far, moments of success have been my very first interview, actually, with Mrs. Hash, which many of you know as Leslie Hash, an amazing math teacher here. I was kind of nervous to start the interview process because it had been a long time since I had done anything like that, and she calmed my nerves because we had already kind of known each other in the beginning, and that was really fun because if any of you have talked to Leslie Hash, she is incredible, which was really great. Also, my mentor, Mrs. Hart, helped me find a good balance between the interview, research, and my narrative in between the book, because I didn't want it to come out just as a research paper. I don't think that's fun to write. I don't think that's fun to read. So there's a lot of my own thoughts and stories along with the interviewees because I kind of can't add in some of my own opinions. Failures and learning points. I started this project close to the beginning of second semester last year. I quickly found out that writing a book is a very long and strenuous process, which any of you have gone through school, obviously. Just writing in general takes long and a lot of time. But also balancing that with my work and with school and family time, it kind of became a lot, but it ended up being a really good time management learning process. And also the main difficulty, even more than that, is learning that the interviews for my books don't come very frequently. I was hoping that we were going to get a lot more interviews pretty quickly on, but obviously many people have very busy lives. Obviously, you know that because I agree with the busyness. Just hard to schedule time for everyone to have a balanced life, not be stressed about it, and get the interview in with like enough hours because I kind of like to talk a lot. I choose people who like to talk a lot. It takes a long time. So far, Small Town Feel has impacted me as a student because it's influenced me to examine the possibilities my future can hold. I'm kind of planning on entering into an English major in college, which this will open up a lot of literature doors for me, hopefully already having this published before college happens. That would be really cool, I think. And this has been an eye-opening experience firsthand of seeing how busy everyone's lives are, because you hear about it all the time, but being a high schooler, your busy life is friends and work and school and social life. But I'm definitely starting to get a feel for everyone else's professional lives. Also, I'm hoping it will impact the community in the way that all the travelers, the passerby, and the people who are non-Franklinites will see that Franklin is truly an amazing town, not just for its renovation and its tourism, but because people kind of love to stay here and live here forever. As you know, by walking into any Kroger anywhere and seeing 15 people you know. Very, very prominent. Also, all of our community members play such a huge part in making Franklin feel as comfy and cozy as it is, while also helping it develop into the amazing town that everyone knows of today, which I'm hoping will be showcased in my book. What's next so far will be finishing the book, since that has not happened yet. Hopefully that'll be happening mid-second semester. Cannot promise anything at this moment. And until then, I'll be continuing to work on scheduling interviews, which I'm planning on going a lot smoothly in the near future, and writing the chapters, which I feel like I've gotten a good head start on, but gotta keep working on it. Also, I'd like to thank the board members, the Brennigan Foundation, and Mrs. Hart and Mrs. McCain for allowing us to participate in our 10X projects. We honestly could not do this without any of you. It's been a really awesome experience so far, and I'm excited to see how all of it turns out. Also, if you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate shaking all of your hands because this has been kind of a big deal for us.
You're a great speaker. Good job.
Good job. Thank you.
So hopefully it's as evident to you all the hard work and innovation and success that these students have seen through this program. So please help me in recognizing them.
When's round 2 begin?
We are meeting the next week, 17th, to discuss how we go from here.
Nice. All right. Thank you much. Moving on, FCS enrollment, Dr. Clendenning.
Can the students go if they need to go?
Yes.
You mind?
Yes, please. Yes, it's a good time to exit if you'd like to. I'm sorry. Or you're welcome to stay.
Do you need to go? I can stay through more presentations. Okay.
All right. Big crowd. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz. Just a quick update on the enrollment. Friday is ADM Day in the state of Indiana. Today, we are sitting at about plus 60 students, which is very nice considering where we were trending back in the summer. And I think you're starting to see the neighborhoods begin to fill up and people continue to come to Franklin for the many great things like 10X and the things that we're providing. Also, just to note, we do have 329 students that transfer into our district. So that's a nice number as well. But we'll be submitting the final report on Friday, but that's where we are right now.
Very good. Thank you. Strategic planning.
And just a couple other highlights and notes about that. We are looking back over the 10 years that we've been together as a district and then looking ahead to the next 10 years. What's school going to look like for our students? We're going to continue to focus on our mission of being student-centered, innovative, and creating great learners. What does that look like in today's era? Because we know looking back in 2009 to today, we would have missed some things, saying that's really important to us. So we're going to do that during the strategic planning process. We want many voices around the table. I'm hoping to have around 80 people participate in the conversation. Mr. Wertz and I will kind of facilitate the journey for this, as well as engaging a lot of people. We are having student voice. I'll be meeting with middle schoolers and high school students over the next several months to get their input on what they think is going to happen, what they want to see happen in our district. We are going to look at grades 5 through 8. There's been a lot of conversation in our community about what is 5 through 8. You know, middle CBIS is in and out, middle school's in and out. What's that journey look like for our students? So we're going to capture the attention, the conversations around that, and begin mapping that out. Obviously, with growing schools comes the conversation around redistricting. We have, Dr. Hayden's building is about 600 students, and then we drop all the way down to Union at about 130. So we look at our district. What can we do to create more equity and balance? That I think is going to be required as we look forward to the next 10 years. So those are a few of the highlights of the strategic planning process. I want to engage everybody in that conversation, and I am looking forward to that.
Very good. Thank you. Looking forward to it as well. We'll move on to propane buses. Mr. Dickinson.
Good evening. Mr. Sewell spoke a bit about propane buses and what our future looks like with those. Wanted to come in and talk a little bit more in detail of how we got to this point. I started looking at propane buses about 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. At that time, some of the city leaders were looking at changing some of their fleet over to propane as well. At that time, the cost of ownership really didn't add up for us. And there wasn't a lot of schools around us that had propane. I kind of let them, if it's going to be a mistake, let them make those mistakes first. But anyway, since that point, IPS in 2016 purchased 100 buses, propane buses that have had them online since then. Warren Township, they bought buses in 2016. They started out with 11, and in December, they're going to take delivery of another 11, which will bring them to over 50. Carmel, Wayne Township, there's several of them in Marion County that have went to propane. Everything's kind of making sense now. There's getting a lot more incentives out there to go with them. Talk to a lot of their mechanics, and they just love them maintenance-wise. Over the past few years, there's in the bus world anyway, there's been a lot of talk about the VW settlement. And what that is a few years back, Volkswagen got into a lot of trouble for cheating on emissions for cars that they brought into the U.S. They were found guilty, and the settlement was a little under $15 billion that they had to pay out. That money is used all through the U.S., but it's used towards air quality incentive projects and things. So Indiana's portion of that was $41 million. And they put together a grant that we applied for and obtained here back during the summertime. The grant, we could have asked for as much as $2 million, but it's a kind of a matching funds type grant. So basically what it is they would pay for 25% of the cost of a new diesel or a new propane bus. In that, we have to basically destroy a diesel bus in place of a 2009 or older, which we have those. So anyway, we have 3 coming at the end of the month. Should be about the 20th of September. We'll have 3, the first 3 arrive, and our hope is to get 5 more by the end of 2020. That's when the grant needs to be completed by. So by the end of 2020, we'd have to show proof of making those 8 buses, diesel buses of ours, unusable by that time, as well as taking delivery on new propane buses. So also looked at, been talking to several different providers for propane, and AmeriGas is offering a pretty good deal. It involves signing a 3-year commitment with them on propane, and it's $5,000 per bus. So pretty good deal there. I've not seen all the fine print. I've seen some of it so far. So I've been talking with them, and they're drafting up a contract that I should have within the next couple of days to see what that fine print looks like. It looks like that we should save around $42,000 per bus over the course of 12 years. And that's compared to a diesel bus. Right now, diesel buses, in order for them to meet EPA guidelines and stuff, there's a lot of equipment on them that it tends to break pretty easily, and we got a pretty high maintenance cost on them. So that 42,000 spread over 12 years, what that breaks down to is $3,500 a bus a year. So with these first 8, we should save around $28,000 a year on those. So through maintenance costs, lower maintenance costs and stuff. And basically they're a gasoline engine that's been converted to run on propane. It's a tried and true motor. It's a Jack Roush package, which I think most people have heard. Jack Roush, kind of synonymous with Mustang, but they've got a pretty good research and development program. And there's a lot of them out on the road now. So some of the pluses to propane buses is that we won't need to plug them in the wintertime. They're good to start down to minus 30. They fire right up. They heat quicker than a diesel bus will. They're 50% quieter than a diesel bus, and the emissions are extremely low compared to a diesel. A lot of propane vehicles that are used throughout schools or through fleet purposes don't even have to abide by an idling policy just because they're so ultra low NOx. So that will be very good, especially in a few areas. We've got a few buildings in our corporation that just by where they're built at and the way the wind blows and where the buses park, they tend to suck fumes right in if we don't turn those buses off right off the bat. And the bad thing about that is in the wintertime, if we leave them off for very long at all, I mean, they're just a big empty toaster that doesn't take very long. They don't heat up very quick. So then you have to worry about the driver driving away from the building with the windows fogged up and the kids that are still on board being cold and things like that. So anyway, looking really forward to that. A few people have questions on safety and stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of these buses out there on the road. Haven't heard of any issues with it. The tanks are 20 times more puncture resistant than a normal fuel tank is. And actually buses have been outfitted with propane since the early 90s. So it's pretty safe in those regards. So,
Sounds like a great,
any questions?
yeah, sounds great. The only question I did have is, so from a fuel perspective, where will you house that? How will that work?
Yeah, what we have there is AmeriGas, and we already got part of the infrastructure in place now. AmeriGas, or actually any vendor that we go with, will set 1,000-gallon propane tank with a refueling nozzle and everything there. So we would lease that at no cost, basically, if we contract with them to provide fuel. The different rebates and stuff that I brought up, such as the $5,000 from AmeriGas, the grant that I got through VW, which is $227,000 for the 8 buses. There's a federal rebate of 37.5 cents a gallon for propane. All those figures aren't figured into that cost of ownership.
Oh, wow.
Because at the time I wasn't sure that we would.
So we're going to have more savings than is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Wow.
so those savings would be above
Great.
what that 42,000 is over the life of the bus.
Nice.
So looking pretty forward to it. Should be a pretty good deal. So.
So do you think we've got the opportunity to take those diesel engines and donate them up to C9?
We won't be able to, as part of the language, what we have to do is knock a 3-inch hole in the block and cut the frame in half so that those kind of would put you in mind of an Obama era cash for clunkers deal to where you had to disable the vehicle so that it was off the road. And that's IDEM's purpose of this, is to make sure that those older diesel buses are no longer able to run. So,
But after we do that, can the kids work on them? Could they
I would
actually?
say so. They probably could.
So that might be a partnership that we could do. donate the block
Yeah.
to C9 or someone to work on.
And that would probably be a good option that I didn't think of, because typically we would probably have to pay to like get it down to Cruise or something like that.
Right.
So, and the only thing that we need to satisfy the grant is, pictures and VIN numbers and things like that to show that we made it disabled. So that's something I will check into.
Okay, thank you.
That's a route that we can do with those.
And the location of the tanker, I'm sorry, you may have said this.
Location of the tank will be out at the transportation building.
Okay.
It'll be a 1,000-gallon tank, fairly small, not real big. We've got bollards and stuff up there now to protect it. The tank is not there, but it's really safe to operate. They say that the drivers and if AmeriGas does it, they'll come in and train the drivers on it. But they said you don't need to wear gloves or anything like that. To refuel, it's pretty much fail safe. Once you hook it up, it stops on its own and handles everything on its own. So, and then if we're away on a trip, AmeriGas also has vehicles around. I don't know if they're nationwide, but they're spread out pretty far, so they'll actually come to us and fuel our bus if need be. But we should be able to get 300-mile round trip with our buses with one tank full. So.
Will we have to put any special security out there? Or are you worried about
No,
that?
it's inside the fence lot, so it should
Okay.
be, we should be good to go there.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
One additional question, seatbelts, are we adding seatbelts to the
Yes.
new buses as well?
Yes, all
Thank
all
you.
of our new buses I'm ordering will be outfitted with seatbelts.
Great.
So the three that are coming, it's kind of trying to weigh out, okay, that the propane would be best in town, the seatbelts would be best where, and so trying to figure out just for sure who's going to get those new buses.
Thank
So.
you.
Great. Thank you. Great update. All right. Next one, mental health. Dr. Clendening.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz. Mr. Purley, come on up. I'm going to start off and talk a little bit about our therapy dog proposal and opportunities. Over the last 12 months, we've talked a lot about how the referendum dollars could be used to help us. And it was teacher salaries, support staff salaries, and mental health. And as you recall, we set aside about $750,000 each year of the mental health portion to impact kids. And when we're talking about impacting kids, we're talking about making it so learning can come alive in the classroom so that they have potential to grow to their fullest potential. We realize that there's got to be connections outside, hence the need for an outstanding director like Mrs. Sperling. And one of the things that we're going to look at are opportunities that we have inside the building. And I'm going to share one. Mr. Purley is going to share one to begin thinking about what that looks like for us. So my title is Therapy Dogs at FCS Barking Up the Mental Health Tree. So what are we looking at? We are looking at making sure that our vision comes alive of being student-centered and innovative. And on our journey, we actually talked to a lot of people about this idea because when you first hear about it, you're thinking, is that really the best way, I think, to utilize some dollars? And after we talked to a lot of different people, we felt like, you know what, at the elementary level, it's a good first step. I had the superintendent tell me that if they had to do it all over again, that's what they would buy at the elementary. Because, and you're going to hear about this, the dogs, they don't care what the kid looks like, wears, their wealth, what they smell like, or anything like that. They love unconditionally. And it's amazing what it does to the environment immediately when the dog takes over. We're going to use referendum dollars as well as Title IV dollars. I want to talk a little bit about. We did reach out to Monroe County schools and Hamilton Southeastern schools. Hamilton Southeastern passed a referendum 2 years prior to our success, and they partnered with a third party and utilized most of their dollars for that and talked about how they implemented. Monroe County has a mix of social workers and dogs. And when I talked with Dr. DeMuth, she's the one that said, At the elementary level, I really feel like the dog does great work because it immediately changes the environment and brings that kid back down to impact learning in a very positive way. You're going to hear about some research that I found around that as well. And also, what have we done to take this planning process? The last step in our plan is really reach out to you all and share where we're headed and what we're thinking. I love this quote. A dog is the only thing on earth that loves you more than you love yourself. And we know that there's going to be some people like, I don't know if I like dogs or not. And we get that. And we're going to plan for that. Ding. Thank you, sir. So here's our goal: to help support a learning environment that brings forward individual student growth. We need kids to be able to reach their full potential. The next 10 years are going to be an exciting time in life and education. But we also know it's a very challenging time for our kids. You know, the millennial group, if there's any still left in here, the millennial group is the most stressed out group the world's ever seen. And you start thinking about, wow, what can we do to make a difference back early? And so this dog is going to help us. You'll notice that the dog here is a Labradoodle. And actually this picture comes off of Ultimate Canine's website. Ultimate Canine is the partner group that we're going to partner with. And Julie Case is the handler. Julie also has a connection into our district already. I'll talk about that in a second. They have a choice of a Labradoodle or a Labrador Retriever. We're proposing that we go with the Labradoodles because of the non-shedding, hypoallergenic. That way, if a student says, I am allergic to pet dander and those things, this is the opportunity to provide the best environment for that student. Ding. What are the benefits? There are really 4 benefits that we see early on in this pilot project. One, on the cognitive side, the kids are actually going to help stimulate memory and bring problem-solving skills to the forefront. One of the things that Julie Case, the trainer, told me was that the dog has the potential to quickly bring the environment back down so the kid can get back into that learning process. In addition, schools that already have these programs utilize clubs and activities to help with the dog. Right now, our school counselors provide a lot of opportunities for different groups and sessions. Well, Julie says there are a lot of schools that have the dog be read to. The dog can help do math problems. Now, I was not doing the math problem, but they're having the kids talking to that dog. And it's an amazing thing to see what takes place. On the emotional side, this is the one place that I think that we're starting to really see that significant being of the dog take over into the classroom. Julie was telling me that when she sees her therapy dogs going to the classroom, you hear about their dog going to the classroom, where tension is high, the kid's out of control or things are starting to just lose it, the dog immediately brings the tension back down. The dog is going to be trained to do a couple different things. It's going to be trained to apply pressure points. Think about like a weighted blanket. And that's what the dog is going to be able to do on this emotional side of life for us. It also has a physical response. Statistics and research shows us that it actually helps bring your blood pressure down and impacts your heart rate. Well, if you've ever seen our little kids, and I know Becky and she's seen it in our school, or Christy as she comes out to the schools, these kids are in fight or flight mode. Their heart's racing, they're breathing hard, and the dog has the opportunity to bring that back down into realistic. It's an amazing thing that's going to take place. And then socially, the dog loves everybody. The dog will interact with a wide variety of people. And when the day is calm, the dog's still going to be at work. It's going to come every single day to our schools. So it may be in classrooms. It will have a station in the building for us to travel to. Ding. There are 3 types of dogs in this world. There's our pet, kind of like Leo and LaRue, if you know in my house. They're definitely pets. And then the therapy dog. So the therapy dog is like Titus. If you recall, Titus came to school several years ago when we had the tragedy of Caleb Buck passing away. Titus came to school and followed Caleb's schedule that very next day. And he allowed the kids to interact and share in that grief process. with Titus being there, and then Jenathy rather was the handler for that. This dog right here will interact with, it's a very social dog, but also is a very smart dog, will interact with a lot of variety of people. The next type of dog, the therapy service dog, is the type of dog we're going to get. This dog is going to be loyal, and it's going to be focused on its job of being a therapy dog. It's very hard to get to this level. We're going to see, and once we enter into the program, it's going to take about 8 months to come to fruition. The first 8 weeks of the litter being born, they kind of watch the dog and they see the temperament of the dog. At 8 weeks, they parse them out to these 3 levels. And this is what we're going to do. And unfortunately, not all dogs make it to this. And sometimes they have litters that don't make it at all. And that's what causes the delay for us. But those are the 3 types of dogs. We're proposing to get a dog that's going to be relatively large, about 60 pounds to 70 pounds, because we want the dog to be durable. Listen, we know those little kids are going to love on it and hug on it. They're going to trip on it. They're going to do all kinds of things. It's got to be able to sustain itself. And so we're looking at that. Ding. Unconditional love. This dog definitely has that. You know, Julie said it's amazing what the dog does. It doesn't care if it had a bad day the day before. It comes right back and loves that person. If you'll click on that, this is an ABC News article. And if you'll scroll down, this is attached. Keep going. Keep scrolling down to the next article right here. This is Cece, their dog. Go ahead and click on that. We're not going to watch all this. I don't know if you can you turn it up? I don't know if we can turn it up or not. That's okay.
When Brandon Spade goes to work at Roger Bacon High School, his dog Cece goes with him. And not as a sidekick. This little girl, just months old, is his co-worker. Proofs in the staff badge and in the fact she has her very own workspace.
This is her office.
One she shares with humans but has made her own. You see it in the toys. You hear it too.
And she's walking in, and all the girls at least go, "Oh my gosh, it's Cece!"
And that is this dog's purpose.
That's why we have her here, to bring that into this building. Schools are tough places.
An official therapy canine.
Look at that little face.
She's here to take down the stress level.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, good 200 notches down. She's a working dog, definitely. For me, I have anxiety problems, so I'll come in here and she'll kind of calm me down to the point where I can go back to class.
Just weeks on the job, she's already one of them. She even has a nickname.
I call her Cedric.
Why?
I just like giving people nicknames. It's fun, and nobody at the school's name is Cedric, so she's unique.
Unique for sure, especially because she can show affection in ways human staffers by law cannot. And in this hyper-connected social media world,
When you're sitting on the floor or in a chair playing with Cece, you're a little bit disconnected from that, and you're just right there with her in that moment.
even if it's just a fleeting tap on the head during class change. When Cece's outside the guidance office, look at how students take the time for a warm fuzzy over and over and over again. Brandon, the assistant athletic director who gives Cece her after-school home, making all this canine comfort.
If you can take us back to the presentation up there. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what can the dog do? The dog is going to be able to be trained to be like a weighted blanket, like I said. They will know that they can jump up in the person's lap. And by laying on that person that has those anxious moments or stressed out moments, it will help bring that person back down. At middle school, talking about our connection to Julie Case, we have a dog right now that goes to school every day at the middle school. It has one person that it's responsible for, and that one person it responds to. I asked that student the other day, I said about the dog, and I said, well, what's the dog think of everybody else? She said, oh, he ignores them. It just doesn't bother him. If they whistle or do whatever or yell out the name, the dog doesn't respond because it knows that person is its only own handler. And it works out quite well with what's going on in school. In addition, if the person doesn't want the dog to lay on it, then the dog will know to stand right next to it, and then it'll put its head on its lap as another pressure point to have the person begin feeling and have that tactile sense of that. And if the student still would say, I don't really like that, then the dog will just stand right beside it and just wait on the person. The dog's also going to be trained to give knuckles. So like if you're walking down the hallway, you see a lot of our kids right now, they can hit that and explode or whatever. The dog, if you would have watched the rest of this, that dog, Cece, actually gives knucks to someone later in the article. But it's a way to get them to refocus on something else instead of the dog. And they can be academic buddies, both reading and responsibility. I'm envisioning that both at our schools, the students will help take care of that dog during the school day. It's going to be an honor to work with our dogs. We'll also have the opportunity to name the dog, and it's going to be a school-wide contest. We're not going to pick the name. The dog is going to be owned by Franklin Community Schools. That's one of the things. Next slide, please. The dog's going to be owned by us, but we still need some policy development along the way. And this is where Kim's going to come in, where she steps up and takes over that leadership for our district. Because right now our policy says we can have service dogs, but there's a whole lot of other stuff. It doesn't really apply if we own the dog. We need to figure out what that looks like inside of our school district. We have to complete the application. There's a $1,000 fee that needs to be submitted for the dogs to put us in line for the process to get the dogs. Training is going to be required. The dog will go through 12 weeks of training before it will ever come to us. The handlers will go through 1 week of training. We can train up to 4 people. We will have one person that will be the lead trainer. And that person, the only thing their lead trainer is at night, that dog is coming home with that family. When they come back to school, 1 of 4 people could have that. And we need to think about who are the trainers? How do we assign them? Or is there an application process? Or what are we going to do around that? And we're looking at that. We need to determine, what does success look like? We've talked to a lot of people anecdotally. It works. But what's metric look like? Is it suspensions? Is it outbursts? Is it looking at ways that we stay engaged in the classroom? Is it student achievement? And that's one of the things that Kim's going to be tasked to do with the schools. We've selected 2 schools, Northwood and Webb Elementary, to begin the pilot process. And you say, well, how did you select Northwood and Webb? Well, we looked at the data. We also looked at our highest poverty schools. And we said, you know what? Those are the 2 schools that we believe will have the chance to have the most data come back to us in that impact. You're also going to hear in just a few minutes what Mr. Perlee is proposing for his building to begin this process of mental health and piloting. Ultimately, it'd be great if we had 3 or 4 dogs at the elementary level for our schools. Do I think it's going to go up to the high school? Probably not. And the reason I say that is because we're talking about mental health issues that Mr. Ahaus and his team sees. We're going to probably need more than just a dog at that point to reach out to help make sure that learning takes place in the classroom. We may include a dog in that journey, or a miniature horse also is accepted by Indiana. If anybody wants a miniature horse, Mr. Ahaus would like a miniature horse in the school. Okay, but so we're looking at starting at the elementary level and making a difference there, and having the kids learn to self-regulate and have success. We also need to continue in the conversation with the partner organizations. One of the things that will be required is that the lead handler will have a home visit. Just like if you were adopting something, you'll have a home visit to determine if your home is suitable for this dog. Because we are actually spending a little bit of money here to support this endeavor. The dog itself is going to cost about $4,000. And that's just the delivery of the dog and the growth up to its 8 weeks. $12,000 training for up to 4 handlers. I am proposing that we train 8 people. Every year after that, we will have to train the dog for 1 day and the trainers again. And Julie tells me that is both for the liability and to make sure that we're still doing the things that they instructed and trained the dog on. We're going to use referendum dollars as well as Title IV, which is a grant that we received last year, and it's a reoccurring grant. A portion of this grant must be used for social and emotional domain. So right now, if you remember, we purchased that online resource for trauma, and our teachers are working through that. We're going to use some additional dollars in Title IV that Mrs. Orman has been able to secure, and that will help pay for some of the supplies, vet bills, and those type of things. We're also going to look for partnerships in the community. Can we go to a local vet that will help us and provide services? Also provide maybe some career opportunities for the kids. As we talk about the high school kids coming down into the classroom, cadet teaching, can we also maybe get some kids that want to be vets to come in and help interact and learn more about the dog and its journey? I think this really sums it up. My therapy is quite simple. I wag my tail and lick your face until you feel good about yourself again. I really feel like this is a good first step in our referendum. It's tangible. It's a way for us to show that we're making a difference. And it's also innovative. If you look at across the land, it's starting to be more popular. The dogs are coming to schools. But Julie did tell me that when we partner with, we're going to be one of the closest in Indiana to the facility. The facility actually is in Westfield. That's where she trains out of. And she did say she'll be more on hands and more on site to help us during that journey. Because she wants to see how the dogs do as well as they get older. So that's the dog program. We're happy to take questions.
First question that comes to mind, what foreseeable risk do we have to the school corporation for that child that's just scared of a dog? Or that, God forbid, that parent that comes in and says, your dog bit my child,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What's going to happen?
And those are things under the liability insurance we're going to review and research. But it's my understanding in talking to the trainer that it's covered. And the dog that we're going to receive is going to be able to put up with a whole lot.
Right. But does our liability insurance cover that today? Or is that an additional rider?
That's where we have to do research.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Right now, like I said, in our policy, we only allow if somebody brings it in, like the student at the middle school. It's a service dog. And we have to go through, we can ask for the policies. And if that dog were to bite someone, that Mrs. Holman is directed to interact and say that dog can't come, but someone else can come. That's what we have to examine.
Okay.
Yes, but that's a really good question about that.
Exciting program.
So I think in terms of that, then we're going to go ahead and place that first submittal to get us a placeholder in for the dog, and then begin that journey.
Great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Purley.
Get 2 dogs?
One
Are
or
you
two
gonna go ahead
dogs?
for 2 dogs?
2 dogs, yes, 2 dogs. Northwood, and then that. And I would think like also the handlers. One of the things we're probably going to do in the first primary is we're going to select the home it's going to go to. I've talked with Mrs. Korig about that. We've also looked at Webb, but we're going to be very selective on who gets that, just so we can make sure the dog does get a safe place in doing that. So thank you.
All right.
Great.
All right. We'll follow dogs with a book. Okay, that sounds good. Dr. Clendenning did mention that on those calm days, the dog will still have something to do. Where are those calm days at? I am pretty sure there will be a need for that at any point of any day at Webb and Northwood when that takes place. In fact, the need was so strong a few years ago. One summer, a teacher brought this book from Ross Green called Lost at School to the attention of all the other colleagues at Needham Elementary School and said, this summer, I'd like to do a book study. And I said, well, I'll buy the books if you want to kind of lead the study. So Diana Bennis kind of led that online over the summer, and our school staff, about 12 or 13 folks, read the book, and then we chatted about it in a chat online. And it changed the way we do discipline and changed the way we interacted with students when they were in that state of meltdown and concern. So the first thing it did was it changed the way we handle consequences for students. Dr. Ross Green says that really students suffer natural consequences when they go into that event. The natural consequence of the embarrassment or the missed opportunity because they weren't able to even participate in that event. So that natural consequence was what they were suffering. As a principal or other folks, we were just piling things on top of it. Additional, not natural consequences. So that was one of the points that took a hold with me, and we changed our consequences in the classroom and things like that. Dr. Green has a great quotes and great concepts that really have stuck with our whole staff too. Number one is kids will do well if they can. It's not if you watch this video, it's not if they wanna. It's not if they want to. They want to be good. They've just never learned those skills. So that's the approach. The Ross Green approach is teaching those skills to those students. Much like teaching reading. And this is my biggest aha. Was he said, you don't give a 5-year-old the book and say, okay, read. And then punish them for not being able to read. And we say, 5, 6-year-olds, sit in that chair. And then punish them for not being able to sit in the chair. They've never sat in a chair a day in their life. They've never been to school. And we have 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that have events that have happened in their life that are going to get in the way of their social emotional learning for them to sit in that chair for 6 hours each day. And he has called an ALSA, and that is the lagging skills and unsolved problems for these students. Well, the 5-year-old can't read this book yet. We have to teach them the alphabet. We have to teach them the letters and the sounds. The 7 and 8-year-old can't sit in that chair yet, or can't learn that throwing the chair is not the right response. You have to teach them. And when he put it in that context, it really made me step back and say, he's got something here. So this is what we would like to do. We would like to meet with Dr. Green's group. They have a consulting program where they would work with 8 to 10 people from Franklin Community Schools over a 15-week period where they are interacting with us. And they have some modules and some like scenarios. How would you respond to this student? Or what is this child's lagging skill? And you identify it down to the number one skill that you think is going to make the most impact, and that's what you work on. When we're teaching reading to kindergarten, we don't do 26 letters. Here, do them all. We do 1 letter at a time. Same thing. Mm-hmm. We would do this with behavior. We would go back to the most basic skill that's going to make the most impact, work on that skill, and then scaffold to the next. In our current special education IEP program for the state of Indiana, they have what's called a behavior intervention plan. This behavior intervention plan really morphed last year, where they put in several different stages and steps to that plan, and it mirrors Dr. Green's approach to working with students. Here's the most important part of his philosophy. It is a collaborative approach. As adults, we have all of the answers. We know why that kid's doing that. It's because they want attention, or it's because they didn't get sleep last night, or really there's only one person who knows why they're acting that way, and it's the child. So he says, sit down with those children. You have to take time and ask them, what's up? And it may take 10 minutes, it may take 2 or 3 hours. But once that kid builds that rapport with that adult, they'll tell you what's up, whether you're ready to hear it or not. And I've heard a lot of horror stories of what's up to get them, but they'll spill their guts. They'll tell you what's happening. And then you kind of better understand why that child's that way. Or it could be, what's up? And they're like, I really don't understand that kind of math problem. And you're like, oh, well, wait just a minute. Like, this is an easy fix. So there are sometimes those easy fixes, and there are sometimes those big challenges, but that you realize how big a hurdles you have in front of you. I would like to get this started relatively soon, probably after fall break. If we do it after fall break, that 15-week program would allow us to kind of finish first semester and then get a good start in the second semester with that support of those 8 to 10 people, including teachers from grade levels, hopefully Ms. Kent Sterling, myself, our counselor, and other folks at Needham. So questions about Lost at School, Ross Green approach?
No, the only thing I'll say is I've read the book. I actually met with their group last year, and this is as a parent, not as a school administrator at all, but it was a fundamental shift in how you think about behavior. And it was the most difficult, but yet had the most impact for us. And to me, it worked for us in amazing ways. It really taught us to teach our kids differently instead of the traditional way, which is what we all grew up with. So I'm excited for this journey.
Great.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right.
We do have breaking news, though. Mrs. Moran heard his presentation last week. She talked to Mrs. Warland and said, is there any way CBIS can partner with this? I would like to recommend that CBIS join the journey. It would also give us one relatively large elementary school, because CBIS lists as elementary school in our journey. So 800 kids and 400. It'll give us a chance to see how it functions in both settings. So with your permission, we would like to include CBIS in this pilot structure.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yep.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on this, Dr. Clendenny?
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Moving on to action items. Hubert
Welcome
letter.
to the team. I just said, welcome to the team.
I am so sorry. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. Sorry. Moving on to Hubert letter of agreement. Mr. Doty.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz and board members. You recall last month, we brought a discussion item for the Hubler Auto Group sponsorship of the athletic department. And so we are bringing that back now, hopefully seeking approval. Roger Young did submit a couple of suggestions, changes to the agreement. I sent those to Brooke Hubler, and she's replied back that there was no problem. One of those was to eliminate the wording out of the contract that said that we would share in the cost of the signage. He didn't feel like that was a good use of tax dollars, which agreed, and they agreed as well. So we eliminated that out of the language. And then also we put in the language what the employee discount would be. So that's in there as well. So that's before you tonight, and I'm seeking that approval.
Move for approval.
Moved for approval. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Sewell, we're going to talk about the change order on the vapor mitigation.
Are we live? Okay, all right. You have in your agenda items a change order, the amount of $24,574, I believe. That relates to conditions at Webb Elementary that were different than what EnviroForensics, the contractor that did that work, expected when they prepared the original design for the project. So the project was submitted out for bid with the understanding that there were moist sands beneath the floor. When they actually got in there and started drilling holes, they found clays that completely kind of changed the number of extraction points that they needed, and that added some substantial cost to the project. So consistent with the provisions of the contract, they asked for this change order to address those different conditions. So that's what all about. I did ask Mr. Lancer from Lancer Beebe and his team to evaluate that request, that claim of different conditions, and they agreed that it was a reasonable and understandable request.
All right, very good.
Move to approve.
All right, it's been moved for approval. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. All right, you're up, Mrs. Gross, for a number of resolutions.
Who's ready for budget? All right, back row. I like it.
I like that. You get a project.
Okay.
Does that mean their budget is approved?
So last month I came to you with a full presentation at the budget workshop, and this meeting will serve as the public hearing for our budget proposal. On the screen, you'll see a final draft of our Form 3. The only change there has been since you saw this in August was I had the our Department of Local Finance and Local Government Finance representative take a look at what we had submitted. She discovered that we hadn't requested the maximum levy. And at this point, you need to dream big and ask for all you can. So we increased our ask by $90,000 in the operations budget for to achieve that maximum level. That took our tax rate from 60 cents in the operations to 61 cents. So not a huge impact, but she definitely recommended going after the maximum levy. So that's the only change that you'll see appear between now and in August when we reviewed it. Any questions on that? The next step for the budget as a whole is for formal adoption at the October meeting.
Okay, so we're not voting on anything right now?
No,
Okay,
this is the public hearing.
got it. Public seems interested.
Yeah, I think they're a little disengaged with this, but I'll take that as a confirmation. So one of the action items on the agenda is to approve the capital projects plan. The capital projects plan was advertised both in the Daily Journal and on our website. And so I'm requesting to move forward with approval of this plan for the 2020 calendar year.
Curiosity, did you receive any response from either of those sources?
I did not.
Okay.
I did
Move
not.
for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now on to the bus replacement plan. As Mr. Dickinson alluded to, we're kind of switching gears to the propane buses. We will take ownership of 3 of those later this month. And we have another 3 in the plan for 2020. And along with the purchase of those 3, we'll get 2 free buses out of that as well. So
Wait, I didn't, how's that?
the VW grant
Oh, right, okay, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
is 25% per bus, so
I
it
see what
ends
you're
up
saying.
being
Okay,
buy 3, get 2
Right.
free.
yeah.
So that's part of our plan that we're requesting approval for.
All right.
Move to approve.
Any questions on that?
It's been moved for approval. Are there any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right.
Okay, my last agenda item is what's become routine quarterly is a resolution to transfer $1.8 million from education to operations. As you recall, we do this on a quarterly basis, and this particular amount covers expenses in June, July, and August.
All right.
Move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right,
you.
Dr. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Clendening. Resolution to sign agreements for alternative
This is
services.
really a change in IDE practices. In the past, you recall we have a student that needs least restricted environment away from us, that application or contract would come to all of you with redacted student's name. You would approve it here, and then we would make forward. Now they were changed in that the board president would get an email, or the board president has the opportunity to designate the superintendent to receive the contract inside of the actual software package. I can then assign it and then bring it to the board after that. That just expedites the excess cost opportunity. This is a very narrow resolution that I'm proposing today. It would only give me the authority to act on behalf of you for the excess cost of a student going to a least restrictive environment away from us. And just as a note, this has already actually been decided by a case conference already, and we're just honoring the case conference decision. So this is what this would be. I think it would streamline the process for for Brian right now, but also for future presidents. And we would also bring this back each year as a resolution to make sure that everybody's still comfortable with that.
Okay.
So I'm asking for approval on a narrow focus resolution that I would sign for excess costs in special education for our students. And in the next available time, you all would get to see that, and we would actually formally approve it.
Makes sense.
Should we have, if this then is a timed document?
Yes.
Or should we have that on there? That it's good for 1 year or good for?
Yes, we can add that.
Period?
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense.
Then I move for approval.
All right, it's been moved for approval. All those in favor signify by a sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. You're a little slow on the eye, were you?
Yeah, I was.
Had to think about
I
it?
did.
All right, thank you. All right, we are going on to Mrs. Scott for the rides agreement for special education.
Mrs. Scott couldn't make it tonight, so
Okay.
I'll speak to this one.
Okay.
As Dr. Clendening just alluded to, this is a situation where we found ourselves in a place where we needed to place a student in a timely manner, but we also needed board approval and things like that. So I think this particular situation kind of resonated with all of us, and we determined we needed some process around this. This particular student needed to be placed in a residential facility. This is kind of a couple levels up from what we can provide. We have our services here. We have a partnership with New Connections, and RISE is even a level above that. So Mrs. Scott has made these connections with RISE, hopefully this will provide a pathway for us to refer other students if necessary. And we had Mr. Young review that contract. There was specific language in there that he and I were both uncomfortable with as far as liability goes. We sent them some revised language and said, if you can make these accommodations, then we'll be able to sign the agreement and move on with the partnership. So they agreed to those revisions.
Good.
And that student has been doing very well in the RISE facility.
That's great.
So, any questions on that?
No. Glad to hear.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to board administrative comments, Dr. Clendenning.
Thank you. As Mr. Purley shared, we are reading a book, Lost at School. And I thought each month we would come back, the principals are reading this book, and we're having an extended conversation at the cabinet level about this. And I thought it'd be good for the board also to join us in that journey. You're more than welcome to come, usually on 9 o'clock on Monday or on a Tuesday morning if you would like. But I thought if not, we would choose one question from our study guide to just engage in a brief conversation about the book. So we are finishing chapter 1. And so we have a study guide that was actually provided by Dr. Green's facility for us to help us travel through. And so Mrs. Worrell and I chatted briefly today and selected one question. And we turn over to Mrs. Worrell for this first question.
Dylan's smiling. Are the principals ready too? Yes.
Andrea's like, where's
What?
my
What's going
computer screen?
I need a dog.
So the question that we picked out, I don't know how many of you have read chapter 1, but what was your reaction to the incident involving Joey? So it's the story at the beginning of chapter 1, introduced in the first chapter, and who seems to be suffering in the narrative, and why do you think that's the case? So what was your reaction to the incident with Joey? Who seems to be suffering, and maybe why do you think that?
Are you asking us?
Christy,
Yeah,
go for
right.
it.
It broke my heart.
Yeah.
It was just heartbreaking. And I think Joey and his mom, and probably the administrator somewhat, but he and his mom are really suffering a lot. That poor little boy just made me want to cry. It was sad. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but
Do we see this kind of thing in our schools?
yes.
So I see some nods back there. So
So a little bit of a tangent, and Mr. Purley answered my concerns very well when you addressed, and you didn't know my question, but about 2 years ago, when Dr. Clendenning, we had an exercise, how do we go from good to great, and the changes in the school. And there was a book there, and forgive me, I forget the title of the book, but it talked about that our structure of our schools is really back from the early 1900s, right? We've not changed as a society of that. And we've asked so much of our teachers to do extra, right? So it's no longer we're just teaching reading, writing, and the extracurriculars, right? We're teaching them how to eat a balanced diet, how to behave, right? All the other things. And my first reaction after finishing chapter 1 is this going to be another thing that we're going to ask the teachers to do? And how are we going to ensure that they don't see this as a burden, that it really is something that's beneficial to them, but you've already done it, right? In the workshop that you held, in the interaction that you've had there, and you said that, the attitudes have changed, your methods have changed. So I was really pleased to hear that, because that's my biggest fear, is that we got to keep in mind that our teachers do a lot for us. You guys do a lot for us, right? And if this is just another thing to add to the plate, well, where am I going to have the time to do it, right? So I was really pleased the way you addressed, the activities that you've held over the summer, the approach that you're going to take, because could be successful, right? I think we got to work about what is that metric of success. You know, I'm the data guy, right? Show me the data that we're really going to make a change. But I think you're really taking that right step forward to head that way. So I was really happy with that.
And I think that brings up a good point. Joey's suffering, his mom is suffering, but so are those
Yeah.
administrators and
Absolutely.
teachers in
The
the
teachers
Absolutely.
just so hard, and the other students in the classroom. I mean, they were being told, just go back and do it. They don't understand
Right.
what's going on with Joey, and that's disturbing to them. That just interrupts everybody, and it's hard to get back on track, I'm sure, after something like that. So.
which is really why this journey that we're on, this mental health journey and the work that they're doing, our teachers are doing, Kim, what she'll be doing, why I think that's so important. Because there is a lot of pain and it impacts a lot of people.
Right.
So I'm excited to see what happens through this journey and what we learn. So, it's great.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Board docs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, move
Yeah,
on to the next.
is the
bylaw.
policy section of Neola, where we go through first reading, second reading. Neola has changed their process in that they partnered with a third-party vendor called Board Docs. And you received information from Terry Spradlin throughout about an advertisement about turning the agendas into Board Docs, et cetera. Board Docs policy is free. We're going to be gifted with that, no matter what we do, as long as we stay with Neola. So the question is, do we want to shift everything to Board Docs? And it'd be $9,000. Mr. Sprout did sit in a webinar to listen to the advantages, et cetera. Or we don't have to. It's really an option. So today, it's more of a food for thought for us. I was telling Mr. Wirtz when we talked about the
Right.
agenda. It's $9,000. It's not a lot, but you know what? It's $9,000. And if you're happy with this, then we can probably make it. This guy, he would be very happy with that. I'm not going to speak for him, but I think that would be the answer. I will tell you the only caveat that I see in our system is for an outside person, if they want to Google therapy dogs, it's hard for them to figure out where in our minutes and everything takes place. That's the only thing that I really believe we would gain by paying $9,000 a year.
A year.
I think Mr. Sprout can come up with a way to help maybe search some of that and do some things differently. If you're okay, I think that's what we would be happy to recommend. Is that correct?
Great.
So you're fine. Yes.
So the bylaws and the policies would be our board docs, but then also our agenda. Is that what you're
Yep.
saying for the meeting?
Yep. Policies are going to be Board Docs no matter what. They'll just be attached as a link. Like right now, when you click on our website, it looks like our policies look completely different anyway. We'll just see a different look again. But they wanted to know if we wanted to go this route. So
Okay.
if you're comfortable, I think we're comfortable.
Okay. Sounds like everybody's comfortable. Okay. All right, moving on to Coogee outbound trip.
Yes, a year from now, we'll be sending a group of students, with your approval, to Coogee, Japan. It's an opportunity for our students to participate in a partnership program. As you know, in January, they come to us. We have anywhere between 5 and 8 students that are middle school to high school participate. This is going to be a celebration of the longstanding partnership next year. So the mayor, Franklin, the mayor of Greenwood, as well as our district, have been invited to go out to Coogee. They would like to bring students as well. We are asking for our contribution to be about $5,000. That's what what we paid for last time were chaperones. We paid for the chaperones, air flight and meals and hotel accommodation. The students actually will live with host families. Greg Moore and his wife will be serving as translators, and they're going to go to kind of help spearhead it. And if you recall, Greg went last time to kind of help with that package and opportunity for our students. This is really an awareness at this time. We will come back as we finalize details. Coming up on Friday, the mayor, Dustin Huddleston from the Franklin Education Connection, and myself are meeting with representatives from Mitsubishi and NSK to see if they will partner with helping send the kids over. So it really has become a community partnership. So that is what the awareness is. I talked to Mr. Wirtz, and there may be potential for Mr. Wirtz to join us because they want the leaders of the district to come participate in this conversation. Because you know, when we get them, we get the leaders of their district. It's usually a school board member and also either the English teacher or the assistant principal who knows English to help engage in that conversation. So we're asking for that same thing. So it'll be myself, probably Mr. Wirtz, as well as 5 to 8 students. Just as a note, Abby Tatera, if you remember Abby, she went as an 8th grader. She was one of the students that we selected. It is a rigorous process. The kids have to fill out an application. They have to be interviewed and to make sure they're good representatives both of our school district and the city of Franklin. So this is just an awareness. It's September. I think it's the 16th through the 20th is what they're looking at. But it'd be 2 weekends that we would be there. Fly into Tokyo, spend some time in Tokyo. The kids would do sightseeing, take the bullet train to Kuji. They live with host families. And then there's a parade that lasts 2 days, of my understanding. and then we would come home on that Saturday and then travel back and be back on late Sunday night. So.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sewell, safe visitor supply updates.
So during our last board meeting, you will recall we asked for your approval of the safe visitor solution, and Mr. Lamb and Mrs. Bright. We looked into that. It looks like we could be looking at up to about 175 or so visitors a day that we would have to have supplies for, and that amounts to pretty significant costs that we have to account for. So that ranges, looks like somewhere $4,500 for all 10 locations. So about $400 to $600 per school or per location where we operate the system per year to provide the supplies for that system. So Noblesville Schools is preparing stickers just to kind of bring the cost down. We've debated that. We think that's a nice safety feature. I think what we propose to do is to start the pilot of the implementation with the supplies that come with that. Badges we're printing is really as high as we estimate that it might be, and then kind of seeing where we go from there in terms of accounting for those costs with Mrs. Gross's assistance. So that's our research and outcome of that research on that question.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we did talk about that we would buy supplies through Amazon, correct?
Yeah,
And not
the
through
cheapest.
direct vendor.
Yeah, it's certainly much cheaper to buy supplies from Amazon and quick. So we can kind of buy them as needed.
Do the printers that was part of the quote, are they backwards compatible? So if we decide that we're not going to use the disappearing spot or the thermal, can they go back to what Noblesville is using? That's just a print, a decal.
Did you address? We'd have to look into that. I don't know.
Noblesville is specifically doing that, so advise.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would expect so.
Okay.
I thought the disappearing component was maybe a sticker that gets added to in one of the models. So,
Yeah, it
yeah.
Depends on what variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I learned, Mrs. Moreland.
If you've read the Chicago Tribune or the Indy Star or listened to the governor or Dr. McCormick, you're getting lots of information about iLearn and some concerns about the impact on teacher evaluations and school letter grades this year. You know that conversation is on the table to not allow it. The conversation's on the table not to allow the scores to affect this year, given across the state the condition of those scores. We are going to do a full presentation at the October work session, but if you have any questions that you want me to
December 23rd, at least a majority, and that is when we announced the ratification, the 5. Then 72 hours later, we would then vote for the board to formally accept that. Originally, if you remember the timeline that Mrs. Gross presented to us, that we would do that on the 23rd and again on the 30th. I would like to modify that. We talked about this immediately. That will vote on that Friday. That would allow us not to see that one amendment. Have at least obviously 3 of you there. at Needham Elementary. And I think we did this one other time. We did it right at the very beginning at around 7.
Okay. Is there, I'm sorry, the mental health initiative meeting?
The meeting is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, that's what I thought.
Mrs. Gross.
Yes, we are meeting as a committee tomorrow, and we'll introduce Kim to the committee, and we've got a full agenda for that.
What time and where?
3:00 here at the Guidance Counselors Conference Room.
Okay. Thank you.
And you guys are setting the schedule for the remaining meetings, correct, at that date, that meeting?
We'll decide as a group how
Yeah.
often we need to meet from this point on.
All right. Any other?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'll open it up to public comments. Seeing none, meeting adjourned.